So we are looking at the agenda. So we are going to look at introduction to business analytics. What are the career growth opportunities with business analytics? Then we are going to look at the sector outlook, especially in Singapore, because this webinar is catering to the people in Singapore. Then we are going to stress a bit on EduPristine's business analytics masterclass program, which we are planning to launch in Singapore. Next is how one can reap the rewards after he has done the business analytics course. And then we'll be sharing about the badge and the corporate profile of EduPristine. So if I were to look at the big corporates or the big marketing houses, let me look at Walmart. So typically Walmart has got close to 9,000 stores across the globe with around 1 lakh SKUs, which means that they are going to generate 1 million of transactions every hour. Now this involves terabytes and gigabytes of data which is flowing in and out at every point of time. Now one can interpret, or one can try to understand the pattern of the data, and based on understanding this pattern, one can also design marketing strategies to maximize the profits. Now to understand the pattern, one has to make use of business analytics. One has to also understand what are the customer tastes and preferences. How can one beat his or her competitors? And this is done very well by Walmart, who is the global leader in marketing. So Walmart caters to a number of different products and in number of different geographies. A similar example I want to cite is about Amazon. So everyone knows that Amazon can deliver a package even before we start thinking, and that is the next idea what Amazon CEO has been talking about these days. So to do this, one has to have a kind of intelligence which has to be built in, by means of which one can interpret as to what is the next thing the customer is going to order. So if I'm going to visit the Amazon website, and if I'm going to look out for, let's say, laptops, then based on my search or based on my search results, one or the vendor must understand that I'm going to look at some accessories which are going to be relating to the laptops. So probably he can come up with different pop-ups where he can suggest me that what are the different kind of accessories I must look at. So again, for this, I need to understand that what is the kind of data behavior which the customers are doing, and this can be done using business analytics. So what is business analytics? It is nothing but the ability to record the data. So the first step is to record the data, store the data in the correct format so that it can be interpreted by everyone, and the next step is to analyze this data with a view to have market insights, or with a view to design future strategies. So basically the first step in business analytics is nothing but data collection. The next step is proper data storage, and the third step is analysis of data. Now this analysis of data is done using a lot of statistical methods, and that is what our course is also going to look at. So the course will be covering different ways of storing data, interpreting that data, and then performing some analysis on that data with a view to understand the market behavior or the customer behavior. So why should one look at business analytics? So if there are so many things available in the market, like people are going in for different kind of professional certifications, then why one must have an understanding of business analytics? So the first reason is that to increase the efficiency in any business, one must be able to get some insights from the past data. So if I am a manufacturer of, let's say, mobile phone, so if I'm iPhone, and if I want to understand what is the behavior of my iPhone users, has that increased over time, has that typically tended to decrease over time, or if the demand for iPhones increases during a specific month of the year, it could be during Thanksgiving, and based on this I need to forecast as to what will be the likely demand for iPhones in the next, let's say, 6 months or 12 months. To do this, I must be able to interpret what my past history is telling me. Once I understand the past history, I then need to forecast it into the future, for which I need to make use of analytical tools. So business analytics will help me increase the efficiency in my business. It will indirectly result in improving my profits by identifying and focusing on high margin businesses. And then finally, I can also increase my revenue streams and my risk taking capability, since I am very sure that the data which I have is correct, it is stored correctly, and I have interpreted this data to understand the future customer behavior. So the word might sound a bit jazzy, but I would say that business analytics is nothing but interpretation of data to understand the future behavior of customers, and based on understanding that future behavior, trying to maximize profits by designing customer friendly strategies. If you all have any question, I would request you all to post it so that we can discuss it at the end of this webinar. So if one was to ask me that what does Google do day in and day out, okay, basically Google has close to 1 million GBs of data which is processed at every hour. If you were to look at Facebook, there are 30 billion pieces of content which are again shared on this social networking platform every month. So this is the kind of data we are referring to, and when we have to handle such huge volumes of data, one must also understand at different kinds of data storage and data interpretation techniques. So data storage means that I cannot store so much of data just directly on the server. I need to make use of compression techniques, or I need to make use of techniques which will optimize the data storage so that I can store the maximum amount of data in the minimum possible space. At the same time, when I've got such huge volumes of data, I cannot make use of normal spreadsheets, or I cannot make use of normal softwares to do any analysis, which means that I need to make use of advanced statistical tools and advanced statistical softwares to interpret this data. So basically, there is a buzz which is going on about big data these days. So big data is concerned with high volume data, high variability data, which means the data can be of different kinds, and high veracity data. So these are the 3 V's of big data. So basically, one might be having different kinds of data, but one has to also understand how to analyze this data, which means that analysis of data is more important for a marketing guy than probably the storage of data. So business analytics will take care of, or we will be looking at different methods or different tools which can be used to analyze this data. This data could be from the retail industry, it could be from the airline industry, probably it could be from the BFSI segment, it could be from telecom sector, or it could be from technology. So be it any industry, you will always have high voluminous data which one has to analyze, and probably based on that analysis, one has to design the future marketing strategies. So let me take up an example, typical example of the BFSI segment. So every one of y'all must be having a credit card. Now based on your credit card, one can understand your usage history, and based on that usage history, one can also offer you more products to meet your needs. So if I'm a bank, let's say ABC Bank, and I have offered you a credit card. Now if your spending is very frequent on, let's say, restaurants and on apparels, then probably I may come up with a different product which may be specifically catering to your needs. If you are making high usage of your credit card every month, I can also increase your limit so that your usage increases further. Also, based on your credit card usage, I can understand your customer pattern. I can also understand the customer taste, and probably I can pass this data to serve you better and probably offer you more products. Now the concern here is that what we are looking at is, if I were to do a course in business analytics, what are my career prospects? So there are some of the places where business analysts are typically employed. So you may have a business analytics guy who may be working in SAP, he may be working with probably an intelligence company, he may be working with an IT arm, probably he may be also working with a database management company as a business data analyst, he may be working as a probably a BFSI business analyst, and so on. So business intelligence, business data management, SAP management, IT analysis, all this will be a part of business analysis. Now one must not get confused between business analytics and pure IT coding. So an engineer who has got a background in information technology, he may be looking at purely coding or purely software development and software testing, whereas a business analytics guy is a person who is more like a bridge, or who is more like a connecting chain between a IT engineer and the end user. So it is the responsibility of the business analyst to understand the needs of the user and interpret those needs and translate them to the IT engineer in technical language, so that these needs can be designed by the IT engineer. So if you were to look at some of the salary data for business analysts, so moreover, business analysts are typically employed by management consulting firms like BCG, McKinsey, Bain, Boston, Booz and Allen, and Boston Analytics. They are also employed in the retail and the wholesale places like Walmart, Carrefour, Tesco. If you are looking at India, then it would be Reliance, Big Bazaar, and so on. Typically, they find a lot of place in the banking and the insurance domain. So Capital One, Standard Chartered Bank, HSBC, Citi, they are like typical recruiters for business analytics or business analysts, since they have got a variety of products which they cater to different customers. Business analysts also have a role in the accounting and the auditing domain. So all the SAP modules which have been designed, so basically SAP is nothing but a ERP or an enterprise resource planning tool which has been designed to take into account the different kinds of transactions which are happening in the different parts of the company and merge everything or aggregate everything so as to come up with summarized reports. So even in SAP, you might be having business analysts who would be playing a key role to interpret the data and come up with some recommendations to use that data for future marketing activities. Now the typical salary of a business analyst is in the range of $70,000 to $80,000 in US. If one was to look at Singapore, the typical salary range for a business analyst is in the range of $70,000 to $75,000, which means it's a bit lower compared to US. So you will have a business analyst in Singapore in the range of 65 to 75, whereas in US it will be in the range of 75 to 85. So this is the kind of salaries one can expect after having done some certification in the analytics domain. So next we are going to look at the sectorial outlook in analytics. So currently there has been a lot of hiring activity which has picked up in the last 12 months, especially in Asia. There is a heavy demand for finance, retail and technology sector, especially in Singapore, because most of the banks have got their technology and the finance arms set up in Singapore, and a lot of analytics work is catered from the Singapore hub. Now, companies in the current market expect the employees not only to be multi-skilled but also able to handle multitasks, which means that I myself may be a finance professional holding a couple of finance certifications like a CFA or an FRM, but at the same time I also must have analytical skills to apply my financial concepts in the day-to-day life, which means that I cannot expect that there will be a different analytics guy who will be applying my concepts and giving me my results. It is me who has to apply those concepts and present it to the higher or the senior management. Next, currently the salaries in the finance sector are expected to rise in the range of 8 to 10%. This is because we are expecting or we are witnessing a recovery in the financial markets post the 2008 crisis. So the markets have started recovering. This is clearly seen even from the US or the UK data, which has been improving every quarter on quarter. Employees are also likely to be awarded average bonus of 13 to 15%, and the salaries in the next couple of years are expected to rise, since the European and the US markets are recovering, and probably they may also grow at close to 7 to 8% in the next couple of years, which means that hiring will be strong in the next 12 months due to economic growth in US, Europe and Asia. A large amount of reforms especially in the technology and the finance sector will help the business analytics market to grow even further. If you were to look at specifically US, big data is the next big thing, because people have got a lot of data but they don't know how to analyze it. Every day there is close to 200 to 300 GBs of data which one gets on Twitter. There is trillion GBs of data which one gets on Facebook, but one does not know how to use this data for marketing purposes. Which means that especially in the analytics domain, the hiring growth rate is likely to exceed the growth rate in finance or in marketing, because finance and marketing sectors have been growing at a constant rate of 8 to 10% in the last decade, but analytics is something which is new and it is still to be explored, which means that there is likely to be a higher growth rate in this domain, at least for the next 3 to 4 years. So if I were to go as a business analyst, then I would be entering as an entry-level analyst, then I would be reaching a senior analyst, then probably I become an associate, and then finally I become an engagement manager. So this is a typical hierarchy in the analyst profile or in the analytics profile. Now, as an entry-level business analyst, I can expect something in the range of 65 to 75,000 US dollars. Again, in business analytics, there are two domains. The first domain we referred to was data storage, and the second, or the first domain was database management, and the second domain was data analytics, which is once you have stored the data, you have to analyze that data. Now the blue bars represent the salary levels for data analytic guys, where the red bars represent the salary levels for the database management guys. Typically, the salary of a database manager will be less compared to a data analytics guy. This is because a data analytics guy is assumed to have a higher level of statistical and decision making background compared to a database management guy. So for an entry level analyst, it is in the range of 65 to 75,000 USD for a data analytics guy, whereas it will be in the range of 45 to 55,000 USD for a database management guy. As one proceeds from the entry level to the managerial level, salaries are typically expected to rise at a rate of 10 to 12% per annum, and once you become a manager, which is approximately 10 to 12 years of experience, one can expect a salary of 2,25,000 to 2,50,000 Singapore dollars. So let us look at some of the recruiters who have been looking at business analysts. So you have got players like Fractal Analytics, you have got Deloitte, you have got Accenture, you have got Visa, you have got Experian, you have got Amba, Mindwave, you have got all the big consulting firms, McKinsey, the BCG, the Bain, the Booz Allen, Alvarez and Marshall, all this, and the big banks, HSBC, Citibank, Standard Chartered, American Express, all these financial organizations typically look at business analysts, and typically they have got a separate department for business intelligence and analytics. So if you were to go to any bank or any consulting firm, there will be a separate team of analytic professionals, and a business analyst will find a place in that team. Now, finally, we are going to look at what EduPristine has got to offer if one wants to do a course in business analytics. So EduPristine has got a business analytics MasterClass in Singapore, which means that we do extensive classroom training. The training is done by highly proficient industry experts. Now EduPristine ensures that the trainers are themselves stalwarts in the industry who have got close to 10 to 15 years of experience of how to apply the analytical concepts in the day-to-day life. Next, we have got an access to online material, which means that all the students get complimentary access to selected videos and material on business analytics. We also have a personalized doubt clearing session, which means that we have a one-to-one doubt clearing session for all the participants, and we have got a 24/7 access to discussion forums, which means that students can post their doubts, which will be solved by the faculty. At the same time, we can have interaction sessions with the faculty as and when required by the students. So finally, if one was to do the business analytics master class offered by EduPristine, one will be able to improve the decision making process, because once you have got the analytical background, you get a different view about what will happen in the future, which means that it will help you to make better decisions. It will also speed up the decision making process. Business analytics allows you to align your strategy effectively, achieve a high amount of cost efficiency. It also helps in improving the competitiveness, increasing the revenues, and finally improving the bottom line, which is nothing but the profits. So we are going to look at one example of what exactly happens in business analytics. But before that, I just want to cover some of the details about the batch which we are starting. So we are starting a new batch for our Singapore students on 22nd of Feb 2014. It's a 4-day masterclass program for the students. It will be costing $11.99 USD only. For this, you have to contact Mr. John Kumichi. His email ID is given on the screen along with the contact number, which means that if you want to enroll, you just need to put in a mail with regards to joining this 4-day exclusive masterclass. we would also want to share a bit about the corporate profile or about the profile of EduPristine. What are we into and what have been we doing all this trainings. So we are the authorized training provider for international certifications like the CFA, which is the Chartered Financial Analyst program, the FRM, which is the Financial Risk Management program, and the PRM, which is nothing but the Professional Risk Management program. We are the pioneers and leaders in skill-oriented finance courses in India, which is we offer exclusive training for financial modeling in Excel and business analytics. We have got more than 25 offerings in the form of live classroom trainings, online videos, crash courses, and even webinars. We provide classroom training across multiple cities in US, Singapore, India, Mauritius, and online training in more than 40 countries. Now in terms of our team, all the team has extensive experience in companies like Goldman Sachs, Standard Chartered, Accenture, S&P, Reliance Private Equity, Citibank, and even in a couple of consulting firms like McKinsey and BCG. Now our strength is that we provide industry relevant training with hands-on case studies, Excel spreadsheet models, and we do a lot of rigorous testing when it comes to providing the right amount of skill sets to the students. Now brand EduPristine is a trusted source of training. We have got an online technology platform and our content has been developed keeping in mind the needs of the students, especially students who do not come with the relevant background. We have got authorizations from leading finance certifying bodies like the CFA Institute, the GARP, which is nothing but the Global Association of Risk Professionals, FPSB, which is nothing but the Financial Planning Standards Board, and PRMIA, which is nothing but the authorized training provider for PRM. We have done a lot of corporate trainings. So we have trained professionals in E&Y or Ernst & Young, Bank of America, JP Morgan, Mizuho, Franklin Templeton, and Credit Suisse. We have done a lot of academic trainings where we have done especially trainings in business analytics and financial modeling in the National University of Singapore, in IIM Calcutta, in FMS, and even in the ISB, which is the Indian School of Business, Hyderabad. We have got student base from more than 40 countries across the globe. We have got students from Asia, US, UK, Singapore, even some of the African countries. Now EduPristine offers a multitude of courses in the form of classroom training. We provide videos, presentations on topics like credit risk modeling, quantitative analysis, derivatives, M&A, business analytics, CFA, FRM, financial modeling, private equity analysis, and investment banking, amongst, to list out a few out of whatever we do. Now we are going to look at an example to understand exactly what we are going to do in business analytics. So we are going to look at one example of business or data analytics. So Romano, an analytics consultant, works with Credit One Bank. His manager has given him some data which contains the name of the bank's customer. Further, he has been asked to pull some information from the bank's database pertaining to the customer list. Now this information is with regards to the credit card issued by the bank. Now he needs to define the variable types and what do these variables mean so as to further interpret the data or further use this data for future analytics or future statistical testing. So typically the information which has to be extracted is like the name of the customer. It will be having a customer ID because each customer has a unique customer ID, the number of credit cards which that customer holds. One would also be interested in the age of the customer last birthday, because as one becomes older, typically banks tend to reduce the limits because his earning capability falls as age increases. One would also be interested in knowing the gender of the customer, the marital status of the customer, the annual salary, and the monthly card usage. Now for each of these variables, one has to store a value and one has to also define the variable type as to what value this variable can take. Which means that in case of name of the customer, the value stored will be the name of the individual customer. So one might be having access to a database in a bank which is something like this. So for each customer there will be a customer ID, the number of customer credit cards he holds, what is the age of the customer last birthday, the gender of the customer, what is the marital status and the annual salary, and the usage of the card. So for each of these variables one has to store values. Either this value could be a name, or it could be a number, or it could be even a categorical variable. Now before we understand or before we look at what each data variable is going to look like, we must understand that data can be split into two kinds. One is numerical data and the second is categorical data. Now numerical data could be either continuous or it could be either discrete. By continuous we mean that we can measure it continuously over time, or we can measure it, or the data could take any value. So it could be 16.005, it could be 16.11667, or it could be 17.22335. So it will be a continuous data, whereas discrete data can only take integral values. So it could be either 100, 101, minus 50, and so on. On the other hand, categorical data can be split into binary data, which means that it has only two categories. It will be either 0 or 1. It could be either nominal data or it could be either ordinal data. Now in case of ordinal data, one can count the data, which means ordinal data would be something like a rating scale, which means that 1 would be the most preferred, 2 would be less preferred, and 3 would be the least likely preferred. Which means that one can assign a logic to the ratings given on the scale. On the other hand, nominal data is just a way of representing unordered categories by means of either numbers or by means of either symbols. Which means that a senior citizen could be given a number of 1, whereas a normal citizen who is having age less than 60 years can be given a value of 0. As such, we cannot make sense from the data storage value, which means that 1 necessarily did not mean senior citizen. 1 could have also been given to a youth, and 0 could also have been given to a senior citizen. Whereas in case of ordinal data, the number automatically gives us an indication as to what is the most preferred and what is the least preferred. So 1 to 3 on a rating scale, with 1 being the highest and the 3 being the lowest, refers to that 1 is something which we like, whereas 3 is something which we don't like. Now once we have got access to this data, we want to summarize this data. So this is the way of storing this data. So the next step is to summarize this data, which can be done by means of either frequency distribution, cumulative frequency distribution, line plots, stem and leaf distribution, pie charts, histograms, and so on. Once we have stored this data, the next step is to use this data for future forecasting or future decision making. Before we use this data, one has to perform some kind of data analytics or statistical analysis so as to conclude and use this data for future purposes. So one may make use of forecasting techniques, one may make use of discriminant analysis, one may make use of regression methods to use this data for future decision making. With this, we have looked at some of the things which can be covered and some of the skill sets which students can acquire by doing our business analytics certification. Now I would want the students to post in the questions so that we can discuss it before we end this session. I would want you all to post the questions. Any questions? Any questions for the day?